All right, guys, I am rolling. And I am with my good friend, Master A Todd. What I like to call him. Uh,
Master.
but no, A Todd has been a good friend of mine. We've been friends for a while now. We actually were just figuring this out. It's been almost a decade of friendship, but those moments that we've shared have spanned much longer than a decade. Um, like the memories that we've shared per individual moment has been so incredible and fantastic.
Much longer than a decade.
No, and I'll just give you a quick introduction on A Todd. But A Todd is legitimately one of the best directors I've ever met. He's so ingenious.
Oh, thanks, Jaron.
Oh, come on, it's the truth. It's true. I mean, look at his hair. Like he's directed his hair to appear that way. It's amazing. But no, he is. He very much is one of the best directors I've met. I've worked with a lot of different directors, and I would say that very truthfully because I've seen what he's been able to do with very limited resources and the creativity he puts towards every project. And he always hones in his craft. And he's always about practicing his craft and coming up with new ways to do things. And actors and directors, if you've ever had a chance to work with A Todd, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because everyone has had a great experience working with him, and I'm no exception. But we met, what was it? 2012 is, I think, what we were deciding, right?
Yeah, sometime around.
Utah Film Awards, I believe, is when we met, and I met because there were a lot of like different. It was such an interesting experience. Let me tell you what that experience was. It was crazy. It started off with like showing movies that were shot in Utah, and it was like Independence Day, Pirates of the Caribbean, like this huge highlight reel of like all these huge movies.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then it showed like the stuff that the Utah filmmakers made at the time, and I was like, oh gosh, like there wasn't anything that like really stood out. And of course, we're living a low budget type of world, and so we were able to do something of that high caliber. And then all of a sudden, part of this highlight reel was showing clips from Mr. Bellpond, which is a short film that A Todd directed. And I was mesmerized. I was like, what the crap? What is this? This is amazing. So cool. And I could not believe that someone local had made something like that. And so, of course, I tracked him down. And so our friendship had begun. So
anyway. That's true. You were presenting that year, right?
Yeah. Well,
you were like the main host?
I wasn't the main host. I was one of the presenters, though. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. It wasn't until later. Didn't you like host one of the shows later?
I did. I think it wasn't. I don't know if it was a year after or the year after that, but I ended up hosting the whole thing. So
okay.
It was just fun, but thanks, man. Thanks for hopping on and joining me and being a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. That's fun. It's fun. It's fun to just like think back on those memories, some of the beginnings of our careers and that kind of thing. So yeah, good times, man.
Good times. Well, let's talk a little bit. Let's go back in the day and talk a little bit about Mr. Bellpond, because that short, I still brag about it to everyone. But how did that come to be? And because I know that was your thesis film, but yeah, tell me a little bit about that process and what happened there.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, and feel free to just kind of guide me in whatever direction you want me to take the history of that film in particular. But it was just like sort of my thesis film out of BYU. I graduated from the BYU film department, and initially I wasn't really going to make a project, but my directing mentor at the time, who's Tom Russell, he's still there. I love Tom, and he was a really important piece of like. Or a really important person in convincing me to make a film before I left school. Mm-hmm. A lot of that has to do with kind of my history and with dealing with grief and that kind of thing, with dealing with the loss of my father, well before school and everything. But Tom had like lost his wife to cancer. And so we sort of had like this connection about as far as some of those like personal, historical, kind of things relating to loss, and so he really convinced me that I should make a movie and kind of like channel some of those emotions, channel some of those things into a film. And I actually pitched a film to the film faculty before I finished, and it was a story. It was a much darker story
Yeah.
It was I was pitching it with a friend of mine, Ben Brooksby, who's a professional colorist now.
Okay.
We pitched that movie, but the film faculty, they didn't love it. It was pretty dark. It was about like a rat exterminator eventually getting taken over by the rats, and he gets killed by the rats. But it's a really cool story, and Ben's done some really cool stuff with it.
Yeah.
He did a few things with it kind of after the fact, years after the fact. But Tom, you know, as he was kind of convincing me to like make something before I left school, he turned me on to Edward Gorey, which is an illustrator, artist, and just kind of a storyteller, but like a really kind of macabre kind of illustrator. Like and his artwork and his stories have influenced people like Tim Burton and that kind of thing. So it kind of has that feel to it.
Very much so. Yeah.
And so like I was initially sort of adapting one of Edward Gorey's stories. That was kind of the initial plan. And long story short, you know, I sort of pitched this adaptation to the film faculty, and they really liked the idea. They got on board with that one, but they did ask me, like, if you don't get the rights to actually adapt this story and like send this film out to film festivals after you're done, what are you going to do? And so I said, well, then I'll just kind of like take the adaptation and change it enough so it becomes my own thing.
Yeah.
You know, and at the end of the day, that's what happened. The publisher got back to us, and they were just kind of like, no, we don't want to give you any kind of rights to this. So I just had to kind of like turn that story from a man who was called, in Edward Gorey's story, Mr. Earbrass, to Mr. Bellpond. And so we took this story, started to like flip its elements, flip its like kind of turn it on its head a little bit. But that also, that's when Tom came in with, you know, my mentor, with this idea of like, bring yourself into the story more, you know, bring your history, and all of a sudden it became this story, instead of being just this story about a kind of a failed composer. It was a very kind of tortured artist story kind of thing. Instead of being about that, the story flipped into something being about a man that was grieving and dealing with grief, and became a story of hope and that kind of thing, and where you find hope. And so it turned into something a lot more profound for me personally as a filmmaker. Which was a really good thing, you know, and a really good lesson to learn as a student, you know, because then all of a sudden I'm making something that I'm a lot more passionate about, because it's about subjects that are like really close to me and who I am, and dear to me, and you know, close to things that I've experienced in life. And that's a really important, I think that it's an extremely important thing to bring to the filmmaking process, especially as a director, but I could, you know, or as an actor, I'm sure you could tell me stories about how, you know, pulling personal experience from your own life can enhance the craft, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing is like, you kind of want to bring your voice. You want to bring your voice into a character, right? And figuring out ways where your voice and your experiences, I suppose, can kind of match with the character that you're portraying and playing. And a lot of times it's imagination, you know, like a lot of times, like you want to you're imagining the character, but when you're bringing yourself into it, your voice into it, it has a lot more power, I feel, because it's a lot more authentic. And I think that was what drew me to Mr. Bellpond. I mean, look, it had these really cool visuals. It was like a really cool way of telling the story. But what I loved was that underlying all of that was this man that was tortured, and he was grieving, and he was trying to find hope in a certain tragic circumstance, you know. And I don't want to give the ending away, but I love his decision. I love his decision to I don't want to spoil it, but you just have to watch it. You just have to just know that he makes a wonderful decision to face the unknown, in a sense.
The ending was kind of a difficult one to figure out, and one that I think is, to some people, not the most satisfying ending in the world, but to others it is, which has been that was a really interesting learning experience about that process too, is just to kind of like make something that is you connect to and is kind of dear to you, and then share it with the world, which is a really difficult part of the filmmaking process for me. It always has been. Like I love creating, and I love making things, and I love kind of finding using film as a medium for expression and expressing, you know, important ideas and things that I feel.
Yeah.
Turns out like it's really hard to share those things sometimes for me.
Absolutely, because now you're being very vulnerable to the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then because then you get all the feedback, you know, you get everybody's opinions. And you know, fortunately though, you know, I was able to kind of also experience kind of the importance of validation to some extent as well. Which is that, like, you know, we made the film, we sent it off to the student Emmys, to the student Oscars, just tried to get it out there, you know, and it ended up winning 3 different student Emmys. Wow. Got the Best Director Award, and Sandra Oh and the director of Grey's Anatomy gave me that award. And that
no way, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I got to. They were required by the Emmy Foundation, you know, they were basically required to watch the movie so that you could have some time to spend some time and like talk about it with them after the fact, and that was fun too. It was fun to like talk to Sandra Oh and I can't remember the director's name anymore, but it was just fun to chat with them kind of after the fact about the project and that kind of thing. And then you know, so that was just like a little hint of kind of validation. It was a little hint of like hope that like, oh, I could actually maybe do this, you know, like maybe I do have some talent. Like you need things like that in life and as a filmmaker, to kind of keep pushing forward, because it is a difficult thing to continue to make a living and a career out of, and it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. But yeah, that's why I appreciate friends like you, you know, in my life as well, who are like really important to have those people that believe in your work, you know, because it does make a difference in like kind of you know, waking up and in a new day and thinking of like, okay, what am I going to make? And and do I still have the talent? You know, you still have like all those kind of thinking errors,
like acting doubts in a sense, you know. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's interesting because you know, as an actor, and a lot of actors are different, and there are those that are like very leading man, like they kind of play the same role over and over and over. And I guess my journey has been more of like a character actor, I would say, because I've been able to portray different characters, sometimes like very serious, sometimes very comedic, you know, doing different type of things. And it's always fun. It's the experimentation process, and it's trying to figure out, hey, is this character authentic for this environment and this world, and what needs to happen to tweak and all that stuff, right? So it's good. And you know, it's interesting because I remember, you know, you did Mr. Bellpond, you directed a feature, that one of the Mythica movies, the third Mythica, I believe, that was able to come to set and visit you on. But then I remember thinking, like, I cannot wait for the day that you and I can work together finally, you know? And I mean, I was in LA, you're in Utah, but then, but we had an opportunity, right, in 2016 to work on a short film together on YouTube. And it's heart-wrenching, really. But the thing was, it was so fun. Yeah, like, let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah, the Deadpool thing. I mean, like, so I, you know, at the time that I was making Mr. Bellpond, you know, I was going to school with people like Lindsay Sterling, Devin Graham, you know, Devin Supertramp, and Jake Schwartz, Jake and Katie. You know, a lot of different people that were jumping on that YouTube bandwagon, and it was like turning into like really big things for them, you know, and so it's hard to kind of ignore that, you know, although like the dream for me has always just been to kind of like maybe eventually make a studio picture, you know, like, and kind of make features, you know, go from one feature to the next kind of thing, and figure out ways to jump into that world. And so I was really kind of just focused on, well, if that's what I want to do, I should just focus on figuring out how to do that right now, you know, kind of thing. But it was those guys, it was like the Devins and Scott Wynn, you know, Scott DW. Scott Wynn, you know, he DP'd, he was the cinematographer on Mr. Bellpond. And we got to know each other really well. on that project, on that film, and have been just really good buddies ever since. And he was the one that was kind of most important, and like, dude, you got to jump into the YouTube world,
Yeah.
Um, and so eventually we kind of did, and just started making things.
By the way, before we jump into it, people don't realize what a great impersonator you are. When you say someone's voice, like I'm like, that's totally Scott Wayne right there. That was amazing.
Well, Scott and I are kind of similar in that way.
Yeah.
We can both get kind of grumbly.
Yeah.
Like, dude, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
But the thing that also I learned about Mr. Bellpond is the idea of kind of like figuring out ways to work with what you've got in front of you.
Yeah.
Work and figuring out ways to be resourceful as a filmmaker, which is like an independent filmmaker that's trying to just figure this stuff out on their own. You've got to be able to do that, and you've got to be able to like figure out ways to make things feel big, feel cinematic, feel high production value, with nothing, which is possible to do.
Which is yes.
And one thing that I found while I was in school. This is just an example of that, which is that like I was seeing like all these student films being made, and a lot of a lot of the local talent that was willing to be in like student films, for example, like just like I was finding were kind of difficult to get really great performances out of, or like really, I didn't know people like you, for example, I didn't know like, when it came to like dialogue, I just found, as I was watching a lot of these movies, like it's hard to get like a really solid, good performance out of that. So
yeah.
So that one like little element alone just kind of made me think like maybe I'll make my student film, but I'm going to do it without dialogue.
Yeah.
And so it became kind of like a goal of mine, just to kind of try to tell the story with an actor without any dialogue. But the story is told kind of storybook style. Through a narrator, which is also just stylistically speaking a style that I really love. I love big a filmmaker that's has been a big kind of inspiration for me is Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who made like Amélie, French filmmaker. There's a lot of kind of narrative, narration kind of style elements in there, and I wanted to do something similar. So anyway, like I think when it came to jumping into the YouTube world, it was kind of the same thing. You just got to figure out how to make something look as big production value as you can with nothing, with zero.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's when we started talking about like how can let's just come up with a kind of a fun concept that we could reasonably do.
Yes.
Let's pull our resources together, and then we started brainstorming. What's working really well on YouTube these days. Oh well, like Deadpool, I think it just come out, right? Or
barely, yeah. And it was like killing it. So yeah.
Yeah, it was killing it, and people were making stuff on it online.
Yeah.
It became kind of a social media, just a golden material for social media. And then, like whenever I travel or go to LA, my go-to on an airplane is Candy Crush. I don't know why that is. Like, it's just like, I love Candy Crush. But I don't remember exactly what we were talking, and we were just kind of going like, what are things that are trending online right now, right?
And how do we mesh those worlds together, right?
Yeah.
And then,
which is an idea I've always loved. I mean, that's the idea of where Bellpond came from, which is like, oh, let's just name this guy two words that mean kind of nothing together, bell and pond, and make it one thing, which turns into one meaning, so mashing two worlds together. That's always kind of interested me, whether it's tone, style, whatever it is. I love that idea of kind of mashing things together to create something new.
Yeah. Well, it was so interesting because I remember like we were kind of pulling our resources together, and we were like, okay, we have hardly anything except we have a camera, and we've got like a buddy of mine's dad owned like a really decrepit warehouse,
Yeah.
And
it wasn't until after the fact, like we were you brought up. I'm trying to remember when Anthony came into the picture, but like when it came to like pulling together VFX elements, that was another piece of it. It's like, who do we know that would be just down to do this wacky project?
Exactly. And it was just like one of those things, like it was just resources, right? Just calling people and the thing was, that was so fun to like to write a script and work on it and like pull the pieces together. And I don't know, I think like we shot like a couple of days, like 4 or 5 days, you know, just because we could.
Yeah, like little half days. Yeah, because
Yeah,
we were working at the time. Was this before or after Unicorn Island?
I think it was
Uh,
after actually.
yeah, it must have been after
Yeah.
Unicorn Island because yeah, you know, speaking of Scott Wynn, we teamed up. I teamed up with him and another
Huh.
filmmaker buddy of mine, Cassidy, and you know Cassidy now
Cassidy, of course. Yeah.
very well too, and Cassidy Hilton, and we all and him and Andrew Mika, and we all went out and made this film, this documentary film, which one of the first films funded, or if one of the first films
Yeah.
bought by YouTube for YouTube Red,
Yeah.
and they yeah, we made the film. It was about Lily Singh, you know, Superwoman, this huge YouTuber at the time, and who now has her own like talk show and everything, and
Yeah.
but that was another one of those things that like Cassidy and I like were spending, and Scott, you know, that whole crew, we were spending months on the road together follling these YouTubers around the world, and
Right.
kind of like seeing what the power of that platform is. We were going to like these concerts, you know, that Lily was putting on, which was just comprised of her fan base around the world,
Yeah.
of people that were watching her videos. And it was like the first moment where you kind of, you know, it's easy to watch a YouTube video and kind of just see the number, right? Like
Yeah.
1 million, 2 million, whatever the number is, you know, 100,000, 100 people even. You
Yeah.
know, 200 people is a lot of people that, you know, will watch content. But like to like go to a venue and see tens of thousands of people, like see those numbers turn into people,
Yeah.
is crazy, you know? And so
Yeah.
that was a kind of another motivation where it's like, okay, Charan, we got to like, let's make something and let's team up with Cassidy. Cassidy was really hungry to jump in on the game too. And so he helped, we wrote the script together. Right. And yeah. And then we just spent a whole bunch of like little half days down at that warehouse shooting pieces of the video.
And then I just remember shooting like half days and then like going to our favorite Indian restaurant right after. You know, and eating.
Yeah,
but the thing
we call it aromatherapy.
Aromatherapy. The place is called Aroma. Check it out. But yeah, aromatherapy was amazing. But what was cool was, you know, we made the short, and I thought it turned out great, and I don't even know where it's at. It's got like several million views and stuff. But what was so cool about that process was we just went out and did it. Right. We put together our abilities, our talents, and put a little bit of money in and made a thing. And I don't know if you remember this, but I got contacted by DreamWorks TV right after that came out saying, you need to come in and pitch us. And I'm like, I got nothing to pitch you guys. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just come in. Just come in. I'm like, wow, like this is crazy. And it was interesting because you know, I give this credit to you because you're such an excellent filmmaker, but you know, you put it out in the world and then work just started coming to us because like very soon after, like one of the big projects that we did together was a mobile strike video. And that one was an actual paid commercial, and they got to see your work from before. And they're like, all right, let's go make a mobile strike video. And so we did that like that same year, but I think in November, I believe, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy how quick like stuff started happening.
It was crarisy. You got a manager, and then like you started getting into the commercial world and like started like doing like some really awesome like chat books, for example, was like, you know, your baby and all that stuff. And like that has gotten millions of views. So I don't know. It's been really fun to see you evolve as a filmmaker. It's been great because I've been able to like kind of, whether or not, if I'm working on the project or not, I get to see it after it's done. You know, Manly Bands was one of those. Chat books was one of those. I got to work on this Microsoft campaign that you directed. And that was like a 5-part series that is doing extremely well, apparently. So that was like a lot of fun. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about like, just what inspires you? Like what gets you to like say like, okay, this is how I want to create this, or this is how I want to do it? Because there's a lot of people that claim, hey, I want to be a director, but they've either never directed anything or they don't put in the actual necessary work to direct something. Whereas I see you working all the time, you know, and if you're not on a commercial, you're doing your own personal project, you're constantly developing your craft. You're constantly trying to do different things. So what inspires you, would you say?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of it is, you know, back when I was in school and back when I was like pulling Mr. Bellpond together.
Yeah.
Incidentally, at the same time, I got into like I started a jujitsu class at
Oh,
BYU, and got introduced to jujitsu and started to kind of jump into martial arts. You know, one of my clients just kind of like early on, going right after school, was I ended up making a whole bunch of content and videos for a live mixed martial arts show called Showdown, if
mm,
anybody remembers that. But it used to take place at UVU. But so I jumped into that world too, all at the same time of like making Mr. Bellpond and making these
yeah.
things, and just kind of got exposed to the world of martial arts to some extent, and the concept of being a white belt, what that means, and like also progressing next to like, you know, brown, you know, blue or purple, blue, brown, you know, whatever it is, up to black, you know, and so there's something about that like kind of has bled onto like my filmmaking a little bit, which is just this concept of a white belt mentality, you know, which is that like as you get better at something like jujitsu for something, or anything else really, like as you progress, I think it's really important to kind of continue on with that white belt mentality, with this kind of humility and this or more so this spirit of wanting to learn, wanting to improve,
Yeah.
because that just never ends, you know. And that's actually probably the main thing I love about YouTube, and the main thing I love about even just kind of like pulling, I loved about pulling that Deadpool video together with you, which is that like, you know, so speaking of things that inspire me, you know, I'm inspired by movies. I've always wanted to make movies, and so like, you know, something that's really hard now as of something that I don't have is like, you know, I make a special effort to go to the movie theater at least once or twice a week, you know, try to catch what's being made in the cinemas, you know, and that's gone away lately. But
that's we've shared many a mandate, you know.
yes, yeah. But that's an important piece of like staying motivated for me. It's an important piece of like how to stay inspired, you know. And so like when Deadpool came out, like I was just inspired by the comedy, the style of the comedy, you know, what those guys were doing in terms of like how they were kind of shaking up the Marvel world a little bit. And so the challenge to me was always like, oh, that inspires me. Now let's go try to make something like what like, can I try to make something as cinematic as something that like Marvel would make with just the tools that I have? Like, is that a possibility? Let's challenge ourselves. Let's go try to do it. You know, like, cause, and you know, worst case scenario, you just learn something, and which is also can sometimes be the best case scenario, which is that you learn a valuable lesson when you go make something. You know, that's why it's important to just have the idea and then go do it.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I suppose like that's just kind of, I've tried to maintain that mentality with every project that I have, which is what am I going to learn from this? What am I going to practice? What am I going to try to get better at with this project? And I've just been really fortunate to like have been able, ever since Mr. Bellpond, ever since like I graduated and got done, and you know, with that film, I've been able to like maintain a freelance filmmaker lifestyle and never have to have a job. I've been able to get paid to learn.
Yes.
You know, which is
amazing to think about. You know, it's like you're able to like, I don't know. It's really cool. It's like, you know, with the Deadpool, it was just like a couple of us with like some of these bigger projects, chapbooks, for instance, Manly Bands, whatever. I mean, much bigger crews, I'm sure, you know, and yet you're still maintaining that same level of humility and eagerness and willing to work with those actors and pulling out cool performances out of the actors, which I also think is awesome, because I know that like a lot of the stuff that you've done in the past was like really action heavy and cool, stylized awesomeness, right? And then as you graduated more towards directing, like really getting cool performances out of actors, you know, and I've got to see like, oh, cool, like that was really like a really interesting thing, and like being able to like pull cool performance out. I think it's just awesome, man. Yeah.
I mean, I think like part of the evolution of my career is like I you know, like you said, I got thrown into the commercial world after we made the Deadpool video. I got a manager who was tied to reps, and you know that blew up into like this agency commercial career essentially, which is what has been kind of the bread and butter for me for the past few years. But that you know, and it's really easy as a director in that world to be handed a script and just be immediately thinking about the visuals, just like, how can I make this cinematic and cool? You know, and for that, like, it's taken a little bit of time for me to realize that, like, well, to kind of go there, you know, to kind of like take my focus there, like, okay, like, how can I make this cinematically really, really cool? Like, what is the best shot? What's the best angle? What's the most dynamic thing I can do here? What's the, you know, how can I really bring some energy into it? You know, how can I really take it to the next level, kind of cinematically speaking? But then to realize that, like, now I kind of like have realized that, like, well, all that is really cool, and but it's kind of the easy part. You know, the more important and more difficult part is just performance. You know, it's getting really great performances out of the people that you're shooting, and that's now kind of becoming more and more of my focus, which is like, you know, I still, like, it's really important to make something look as cinematic and big as possible too, but I think, like, I've been doing this long enough to where, like, I think that's becoming kind of the easy thing to do. Like, now I want to be focusing on the performance, you know, and pulling the good performances out of actors, you know,
out of the actors and stuff. And I think that's, like, it's such an important lesson to learn. You know, like, I mean, there's some people, like, they can do the performances out of the actors, but they wouldn't be able to like tell the story uniquely through visual ways to save their lives. You know.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see, like, you're, like, focusing on that and, like, really, like, trying to get, like, awesome performances, because that's the key, right? It's like when people are watching movies and stuff. I remember as a kid watching movies that were, like, really cool and stylized, but then, like, a couple like maybe the second time I go around, I'm like, oh, I don't really like this movie that much, and I realized, oh, it's because I didn't really care about the characters to begin with. You know what I mean? I didn't care about their journey or anything like that. I just thought it was kind of cool to watch it from the get-go. And you still see that all the time, right? Like, you see these movies that have come out that are so visually astounding, and, like, you're like, oh my gosh, like, that was such a cool shot. And yet those movies tank, right? Those movies tank, and you're like, oh, well, I didn't care at all about the characters. I didn't care about their journey. I didn't care about anything like that. So again, it's very cool that you're taking that journey.
I mean, because I think that, like, you know, the way I see it, I've been kind of, during the whole COVID process and even beforehand, I've been kind of going through and trying to watch the filmographies of filmmakers who I look up to, who are sort of my heroes, you know, but then I've been also trying to go back further than that, and then also watch just kind of classic films more and more and more. But I'm just kind of realizing, you know, with a lot of the filmmakers whose careers that I just, like, are sort of have my dream careers, I'm realizing that, like, their earliest, some of their first movies, that's the, you know, you can tell, like, you know, their handle on the kind of the cinematic and visual side of things isn't quite as strong as, say, the performances, because you know, what a lot of the, like, Coen brothers, for example, you know, their first film, Blood Simple, has a lot of, like, kind of strange shot choices, like, outside of, like, what you might imagine a Coen brothers movie being. But what it does have is the great performances, you know. So it's like you can have the kind of strange choices when it comes to, you know, shot choices and that kind of thing. You know, what film stock you're shooting, or what lenses you're using, or what, you know, what camera you're using, all of that. You can kind of make mistakes there, but you can't make mistakes in, like, the performance realm, you know, because at the end of the day, that's what the audience is connecting to. And that's what, like, this first movie, like, by the Coen brothers, that you just see, you see greatness there. You see, like, oh yeah, they're pulling wonderful performances out of that, because you can have all the pretty visuals in the world, and you know, we could talk about Michael Bay, for example. You know, it's like, but if the performances or characters aren't there, like, they don't mean as much, you know.
You know, and it sucks, because it hurts me to say that, because it's like, how many millions of dollars go into, like, those big budgeted movies, you know? So much. So if you don't care about the characters as much, and, you know, it's like, it's not like a movie that's, like, repeatable. People don't want to watch it over and over and over. then I feel like, oh man, we've done the audience a disservice. You know,
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
done them a disservice. I'm just not a big fan of like those type of like really high like octane Hollywood blockbusters that you just don't care anything about. But on the flip side, like some of the Marvel movies, I love some of the Marvel movies, you know, and they have
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
elements. They've got like those really cool,
Yeah,
whatever.
well, yeah, and that's where like Marvel has just like
Yeah,
done such a good thing, I think, and who they're choosing to direct these movies, because like a lot of these directors are ones that can handle the performance side of thing and really like bring out wonderful performances from these actors that gets you to like really connect to them. I mean, I think like
yeah,
you know you compare like the Avengers and Justice League, you know, and it's like
night
the
and day.
biggest difference between that is how much you connect to the characters, you
Yeah,
know, like they both have the pretty visuals, you know, check, you know, that box is there, you know, but
yeah.
do they have the characters that you care about and connect to, you know, like, yeah, so
and,
anyway, I
and,
agree.
and you don't exactly. So I guess kind of like wrapping things up, I want to talk a little bit about during this pandemic, you know, which no one expected to have happen, and you know, all of our work has kind of like ceased for a little while. I mean, things are slowly
Yeah,
starting to pick back up, but it's still very much the future is very uncertain, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
but yet I know that you know you and I were discussing about how you can continue to keep honing in your craft during this time. And right now we have tons of limitations placed upon us as far as social distancing and all that stuff. We're not really able to gather together and make like a big budgeted show or anything like that. So how are you still able to be a filmmaker during this time? Like, what are you doing right now?
Right now I'm kind of like doing a lot of writing. I'm kind of doing a lot of R&D, um,
Yeah.
which is a lot of watching. It's a lot of playing video games. It's a lot
Nice.
of you know, a lot of video games are kind of getting turned into movies. I think like video
Yeah.
games more and more becoming more and more cinematic, and so it's been fun to kind of jump into that world a little bit more during all this. But also, you know, I started like a little project that I'm just calling. I won't talk about it that much. It's mostly just like a project where I've been doing Zoom calls like this,
Yeah.
but with other filmmaker friends of mine. I think I told you about it because I want to do it with you too. But it's just I've been watching all the Best Picture winners from #1 on,
Okay.
starting, you know, with #1, which is Wings, you know, the silent film about World War I, and you know, I'd never seen it before, so I was like, I'm just
Oh,
going to go through all the Best Picture winners and have a conversation about it with other
wow.
filmmaker friends.
Yeah.
Record the Zoom calls. Maybe I'll share it with the world. I don't know, but I'm kind of treating it as like my own little kind of masterclass, you know, series of things. That's
Yeah.
just like I want to educate myself. I want to get better. You know, like again, it kind of comes back to that white belt mentality for me, which is like you know, I want to learn, you know, and I want to continue to learn. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I mean, I think like the other thing that this pandemic is sort of doing is just also kind of like a little bit of helping me kind of reevaluate and reassess like where I want to go with my career, you know, like, and in that sense, I think it's a really good thing, you know, because it's been easy just to kind of like go from commercial gig, you know, agency job to agency job to agency job, and
Yeah.
the paychecks are wonderful and everything, but it's not like I'm not the lack there is like what I'm lacking kind of in that world is this a really good form of expression that
Yeah.
I felt originally from like Mr. Bellpond, you know,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is like, oh, what I really miss is telling stories that mean something to me, you know, that like, and that I have things, you know, I have things to say to the world. And as a filmmaker, as a director, like that's where filmmaking can just be so powerful, so profound, is that
Yeah.
like, if I can kind of share some of the things that I've experienced in life and, you know, with the world, hopefully it just kind of leaves the world in a slightly better place, you know, or makes some kind of impact on somebody's life, you know. At the end of the day, I think that's really what I want to do, you know. And yeah, I mean, we didn't get into the kind of like the personal side of things for me, you know, but you know, after my dad died to suicide, you know, there's a lot that I could say about that subject, you know, that there's a lot of kind of like ways I could approach that subject that I believe haven't really been approached in ways that haven't been approached in the past, you know. Anyway, so I've been doing a lot of that. I've been doing a lot of kind of like writing and working with other writers and kind of formulating new stories to tell, but also like I've been trying to get myself also just kind of like shoot little short films,
Yeah.
Daily and edit them on my phone. Because I do think like if there's any, future or current directors out there watching this, I mean, I do think like a big piece of early on in my career, I was doing a lot of editing. I was doing a lot of shooting. And I think it's incredibly important part of the process to stay in touch with.
Yeah.
And so even if it is just kind of like, I was telling you, I've been shooting like these little kind of daily tasks, like once a day, I'm just going to like, I've got to cut a tree down in my yard. So I'm just going to like document that process and get multiple angles and then cut together a little story.
Yeah.
Just like doing that is great exercise. It's like going to the gym, and that's where like editing is sort of like that thing that I don't love to do anymore. It's a little bit tedious, but it's like, but the outcome is like, oh, look, I created something and I learned something from the process. And like, it is a lot like going to the gym. It's like you go and put in the workout, you do all the reps and you kind of like, sometimes it just sucks,
totally.
But then you get done and you're like, oh, that feels good. My body likes that, like, or on the flip side, if you can get yourself to create something, you'll learn something from it, So I've been trying to do that. I've been also just trying to do a lot of meditation. I do sensory deprivation once a week, and that kind of thing.
Dude, that's amazing. I love that you do that. It's been interesting. Like I've been doing a lot of like, I mean, like for me as an actor, like I've been, creating my own little shorts that I've been acting in, a lot of my own personal meditation, kind of like the thing with the white belt mentality. One of the things I've been really focusing on is like doing things that are authentic to me, if that makes sense. So a lot of times I feel there've been too many times I've been doing things because of the expectation of other people. And I'm like, all right, I need to figure out the things that I truly enjoy and do it and just have fun with it. And like, just sit in that enjoyment for a while. So I don't know if you know this or not, but one of the things that I love doing is to play tennis. It's like my favorite. And so, and I've told you about that before, because like I played with my dad by your house, but with the white belt mentality, I've been playing every single day, and
nice.
Have like different partners that I play with, and sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm getting better or not, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the process and I enjoy learning. Right. And so I'm like, okay, like this is cool. Like I want to like take this exact feeling of like this enjoyment and this learning that, and, I spend hours watching tennis videos because it's just enjoyment to me. Right. And so I think, okay, how do I apply this to filmmaking or to life or to anything like that? Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, right? Is to find the thing that you could just do for hours and hours. And that's one of the reasons why I was reading with you, because it's always a joy, and when you come back down to it, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's fun to create things. And, we both have talked about the need and the desire to share stories with meaning, right? And to do things that are going to like really inspire people and to be like, okay, like this is awesome. Like I want to keep creating. So yeah, man, I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing. And I'm excited for,
well, thank you.
And I'm excited for like whatever that looks like for both of us. And,
yeah, man. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that this whole pandemic thing has also been a really great exercise in just learning how to be present.
Yep.
At least for me, it's something I've been thinking about a lot, which is just the idea of presence and spending time with the family and like really enjoying the time with the family and the kids. And, we have to homeschool, there's not a lot of time to be creating or making movies right now, because we have to figure out how to homeschool our kids or, just take care of the kids. And I don't know, as a self-employed filmmaker, it's very easy to get stuck in the what's next, next, looking ahead, where's my next paycheck coming from? And that the result of that, the outcome is just this lack of presence, that very detrimental.
Anxiety,
What's that?
And an increase in anxiety,
absolutely,
worrying about that future, like wondering what's going to happen. So
so I think like it's important for everybody to just figure out ways to exercise this the idea of just being a little bit more present, you know. And for me, you know, I've got ways that I've figured that out. A lot of outside time, and you know, whether it's hiking and exercise time has been really important for me from just like a mental health standpoint. But also, like I just don't, you know, for better or worse, I just don't spend any time on social media these days. And so, like now, thinking about, well, maybe I'll start creating content back on YouTube again.
Yeah.
I've been realizing, oh man, I have no idea what people are making on YouTube right now. I just haven't been, or Facebook or Instagram. I just haven't really been logging into any of those things because I've also just found that it's a kind of, it can be a little bit detrimental to my mental health. But I think,
Absolutely.
you know, there's ways to make that okay too. You know, like
and I think the key is setting boundaries for yourself, right?
yeah.
It's like,
Totally.
Okay, like hey, we'll use it for such and such time. It's a tool, and then we let it go. Right. And I think the cool thing with COVID is like it gives us a chance to learn to be masters of ourselves, not to let things kind of overrun us like social media or whatnot. Right.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
One of the things, like my buddy, you know, Landon Henneman, right? You know Landon?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Landon and I, we play tennis all the time, and
oh, cool.
He's really good. He's amazing. And one of the things that he always tells me, which I think is so vital, is like, he's like, Charan, forget about everything else. Just watch the ball, which seems like such an obvious thing. But he's like, no, seriously, pay attention to the ball. The ball is the only thing you need to worry about. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about what I'm going to hit, how I'm going to hit. You watch the ball. You watch the ball bounce. You watch your racket hit the ball, and you watch it go over. Like, do not let your eye off that ball. It's a crazy exercise because it actually forces you to be very hyper present and focused, very focused. And then I've noticed that as I do that, distractions just kind of like bleed away. And every time like I hit lousy shot, he's like, "Where were you looking at?" I'm like, "Not the ball." He's like, "Yeah, you weren't looking at the ball." You know, and you can always tell. He's like, "Dude, you're either thinking about something else," and sometimes it's like, "Oh, I was thinking about watching the ball." Yeah, you were thinking about it, but you weren't actually watching the ball. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Like there's a difference between thinking about watching the ball and actually just watching the ball, like letting your thoughts get out of your head and just being present, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been a really interesting lesson on focus because that's allowed me to, you know, I have a little bit of an ADD mind. I think a lot of creatives do. You know, we're all kind of all over the place. And
totally.
Being able to like really focus and be like, this is it and this is me and we do this. We kind of get into that flow state, that present flow state where it's like we're almost like kind of like one with everything type of feeling.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome. It's been a really cool lesson, and like that same lesson applies to so many different areas of life. So I think it's really cool that you've found ways to stay present for yourself, and like to be able to let go of social media and not let it rule you, because I know like it's so easy to turn to social media as a way to combat COVID, you know? Now we're letting something else kind of like rule over us. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Yeah, your tennis ball thing is really interesting metaphor for. But it's funny how much crossover there is to meditation in that regard too, and it just trying to focus on a kind of one singular thing, just in the attempt to get everything else to calm down and quiet down. You know, it's like it's such an important thing that you need for your mental sanity. You know, I feel like
absolutely. But you know what's funny is when I was like back to that tennis analogy, when I was playing with them, and I was just playing yesterday with them, every time I was really present, just watching that ball and watching myself hit it, I became a way better tennis player. You know, I just naturally became a better tennis player. Like, and my body moved out of the way of the ball when it was coming, and I just knew exactly where to go and how to hit it and all that stuff. And it was a lot more fun. I think too much of our the time when we're like not having fun is because we're distracted by all these billions and billions of thoughts instead of like just being completely present in the activity that you're doing. So,
yeah. Well, and you know, it's something I just can't wait to get back to. I mean, it's only been maybe a few months since I was like on set, like directing. You know, you were on the last set I was doing, and I was about to post like a little Instagram video of like you're in it, of the clips of just like that set that we were working on. You know, because we were shooting that, and you were I think on set like literally the day before the shutdown happened.
It must. I mean, I'm surprised that we even filmed it. You know.
yeah. Because as we were shooting, Jason Allred, who was my AD at the time, he kept like showing me his phone. It's like, okay, we're shut down to 50 people. We're okay because our crew is 47.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Like, and then literally like the day after we wrapped, they cut it down to like the social gatherings down to like 15 or something.
Yeah.
Or 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we lucked out with that thing. But man, I did as I've been kind of going over these clips again on my phone that I just like kind of recorded behind the scenes on set, I just like realized a similar thing, which is like, it's like maybe the slightly addictive thing about being on set, especially directing on set, which is that like your focus has got to be so like hyper focused on one objective, which is to finish the day. Just like get the shots of the day. It's like it's so specific. It's like, and it's really great to have that objective, like in life. And so like yeah, it's just one reason I love being on set, because everything else does just kind of like go away, and everybody's like kind of goes on this synergy with each other to like complete this singular one thing that we're trying to get done. And kind of that's why you get these like family kind of vibes going on with the crew. Like we're all working toward one specific thing, and we're all very focused on accomplishing that goal. And like, oh man, I love that. I love being on set.
Well, it's crazy because it's like such it's like a symbiotic unit. Like every single person has to fulfill their role properly to fulfill that one goal, right?
Yeah.
And when you're able to get like a crew and like a set that like runs like that, which I've seen your sets have done, it's magic, dude. It's really magical.
Yeah,
you realize like, hey, I'm not the only person here. It's like all of us together, That's why I actually kind of have a hard time when people pay me like compliments sometimes, like with films and stuff. Like, oh my gosh, you did so great and all this stuff. And I'm like, look, here's the deal. I really am so grateful for the feedback, but there's a director behind the scenes that was like giving me guidance on how to pull off performance. There was a cinematographer shooting a certain way, and like a light hitting me a certain way as I looked at a certain thing, and all those things helped to take a shot that made it so you felt what you felt. So it wasn't just me. It was like a whole team of people that you didn't see. You just saw me. And so naturally I'm the one that's getting the credit, but I would feel so ashamed to like take it just for myself, because there's so many people. There are PAs running around making sure I've got all the food and energy I need to give a performance. You know what I mean? Like it's such a beautiful thing working on set and seeing how everyone works together for the goal. So yeah, man, I can't wait to be on set again.
Yeah, me too. And we'll get there. It'll be fun to just like, I think that the goal for me now is just to start making stuff like we did back on the Deadpool Candy Crush days, and get it out there, share it with the world, and just kind of see where it goes. And inevitably it goes somewhere, It's just like we learned that last time. So
you create goodness, you share it with the world, and then whatever happens, right?
Right. Yeah, man. Yeah. So it'll be fun to like get back into that. And hopefully you and I can kind of, well, not hopefully, but we'll make some more magic together. I think that'll be fun to figure stuff out.
Yeah, and what's cool is like, I want to try different things as an actor. You want to try different director. Yeah. So it's cool to like match that energy up and be like, all right, what can we try together?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excited. All right, man. Well, A Todd, you're the best, dude. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. And yeah, man, let's keep connecting. And once the movie theaters are open, let's set up our mandate. Okay?
All right, sounds good.
Awesome, man. Okay, well, thanks again for taking the time. Okay.
Hey,
all right, take
care.
Bye. Bye.